Readers of every persuasion enjoyed a novel event last weekend at the first ever Portsmouth Literary Festival, courtesy of the Portsmouth Public Library. I'm Carolyn Choate, and in this edition of Culture, we chat with some of the 24 authors representing just about every genre about what it takes to be a writer today. Then we do some myth busting with festival organizer Laura Horwood-Benton about why libraries are very much alive and well in the internet age. Warning, it's going to be a page turner.
This is a scene from a chapter called Freezing in Farrachet. Farrachet is the name of the town where we took a rest break at about 16,000 feet. We stayed there for 2 days. It was very cold. And we stayed in a tea house with a bunch of other trekkers. And I wanted to sort of grab the feeling and the atmosphere of what it's like to be in one of these places in the middle of the night with a bunch of strangers. And something interesting happened that we wrote about. So here we go. For once, circumstances forces us to live by the rules of the kumbu. Patience, conversation, camaraderie. We spend the evening surrounded by a small group of solo trekkers, and it turns into one of the best of the trip. There's Paul, a hunter and outdoorsman from Wyoming, who set about trying to bring his family together by planning a trek for them all to base camp. They bagged out. So Paul decided, the hell with it, I'm going anyway. There's Carly from Ireland, who will be celebrating her 24th birthday in a couple of days, and who hired her own porter and decided she'd do not just base camp, but the hard trek over Chola Pass on her own. There's Lenny O and his Japanese client, who sits quietly by the fire and goes to bed hours before any of us or his porters. Later, Lenny O will casually tell us that he liked talking to us because we talk back. He's a good guy, works hard, Lenny O says of his client, but he don't say much. And we are all entertained and charmed by Chori Tenzing. Chori means daughter, and the little one prefers that title. The lodgekeeper's 3-year-old is small and stout and puffs out her red cheeks when she wants attention. She takes a particular shine to Meenakshi, and the two of them spend the evening chatting about henna and Mina's marriage. The girl is fascinated that Meenakshi knows Nepali, and at one point tells Mina that she does not approve of my growing beard. I overhear one of the trekkers wonder out loud how anyone could raise a little girl in such an uncivilized place. The implication being that Tenzing could not possibly be happy, but she is. As were all the children we passed on the trail, there is no begging and no despair. Many days later we'll run into a British trekker who put it best. These children have nothing material, I mean, but look at them. They may have 2 marbles between them, but they love those marbles, always smiling, always happy. Makes you wonder. Indeed. I feel a flush of anger at the woman's remarks. Am I feeling protective of these people I am now married and inexorably tied to? Do I feel shame at the thoughtless Western attitude, fatigue, and the effects of altitude? The danger of any long trip to Nepal for a Westerner is not pollution or food poisoning or even Maoists. The danger is romanticism.
They're all the original ones, 29 cents.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
What a great event.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and timing is wonderful, isn't it? Right before the holidays. What better than books and signed books by all these wonderful authors for the holidays? Yeah.
So, my biggest thing as a writer is finding the time and juggling that other life. That line about don't quit your day job.
Yes.
Have you quit your day job yet?
Yes, I have. Actually, I do work a little bit of part-time hours at a local library. And I call it my daycare hours because my daughter goes to daycare. But about that whole, your regular life thing, I get asked that a lot. And I'm a travel writer and a memoirist and a nonfiction writer. And my advice always is that your life, your real life, is your writing life. That's where you draw inspiration from, and that's where you pull your ideas from. So don't give it up by any means. Actually use it for your writing.
And of course, the difference that many people don't realize is that for the memoirist, of which I teach also at the Naki Loeb School, is the difference in journaling or diary writing and memoir is the thought that I love the thought of writing knowing that someone might read it.
Yes.
That's the difference, right?
Exactly. That's the big difference. My wife is always asking me, what are you writing now? What are you in the middle of now? Because she knows that I pull all of my work from real life experiences. But I think if you're raw and authentic and unafraid when you go into your writing, as well as when you live your life, people are going to be interested in reading it.
And the thing that's least intimidating about it is you're writing what you know about.
Yeah,
what's to be afraid of? You're writing what you know about.
And what you experience.
Right.
In my case, as when I do my travel memoirs, of course, I always bring a notebook with me. I always bring pencils, not pens, because they some tend to freeze. So you're...
Good point. I wasn't thinking
right.
of that.
Especially when you're in the Himalayas. You're right in the moment of it, and you're experiencing it in the moment, and then afterwards, all you have to do is just put it together in sentences that make sense.
I've thought that, as I've said many times over, that cancer has been the most ironic gift that I've received, and I enjoy writing about it in the aftermath, of course, but for the motivation it's given me to reach my Mount Everests, right? Mm-hmm. So as I go through these experiences, truly I want to write about them, and it spurs me to achieve more and more in that regard. But I've been doing some substitute teaching in the school systems. And what's interesting to me, teaching first and second graders, I'm loving to see, and I know their spelling and their grammar isn't there, but the true self coming out and seeing that raw creativity is equally inspiring. And I feel that if we can get people at a young age and to know that they can truly express themselves, it's just one of the true deepest miracles of life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually spent some time over the summer. I'm a naturalist at Blue Hill Observatory and Reservation down in Milton, Mass. And one of my jobs there is to is to guide second and third and fourth grade classes up the mountain, up to the observatory, and talk to them about nature. And it's really incredible to see how excited they get about a spider or a caterpillar or a leaf or something so small. I also have a toddler, and we're going through the same thing right now with the toddler, is that every little moment of living is epic. And it's amazing. And, I guess it's a bit of a cliche to simply say, oh, well, we need to be more childlike, or we need to turn our attention more towards, seeing things with the big eyes of a child. But it's really true.
Well, I think our message here today is it's always easy to preach to the choir, Dan.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to reach that person out there who said, I haven't picked up a pen or a pencil in 30 years. It's never too late.
It's never too late. I don't believe in writer's block. I never have believed in writer's block. I was a journalist for 25 years, and I think being on deadline every single day for 25 years actually helps with writer's block. But my advice is to read a lot, gain inspiration from the little things. Don't hide. Don't be afraid of writing about your everyday life, even if you think it's boring. It's not boring to you. It's probably not going to be boring to somebody else. You got to start somewhere. So look to your
especially your family.
Life. Yeah, especially your family.
I find that in memoir
friends,
writing classes that they want to write as a legacy.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of bragging rights before we leave. I heard that you just won an incredible recognition in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
I won the New Hampshire Literary Awards award for Best Outstanding Nonfiction for the Nepal Chronicles. The award ceremony actually was just this Friday.
So spend the next 60 seconds telling us about Nepal.
Sure. My wife is Nepalese born. She was born in Nepal and moved to Chicago when she was 11.
Hopefully a Cubs fan. And
then, oh my gosh, she's been wearing her Cubs hat for the past month. I think finally she can wash her Cubs jersey because it was getting a little yucky there. She's a huge Cubs fan. So I met her, we got married and so forth, but she still has family living in Nepal and in northern India. So when the time came for us to get married, her father, my now father-in-law, asked if I'd be interested in going to Nepal to take part in a traditional Nepalese wedding in Kathmandu, which I thought about for all of about a half a second. before saying, of course, yes.
So
Here it
you've
is
been
right here.
several times, maybe.
Yeah, there's our wedding photo right there. Yeah, I've been there several times. We trekked in the Himalayas for our honeymoon. We went to Everest Base Camp, and we lived with a Sherpa, and we ate at the tea houses and so forth. We weren't part of a commercial trekking group. So this book is about going there, getting married, and then taking a honeymoon in the Himalayas.
Oh, it sounds so romantic and blissful and adventurous,
And
all wrapped into
difficult, yeah.
one.
Yeah, well, the most challenging things, if you are not comfortable with discomfort, that the adventure begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
Oh, I love it all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Laura Horwood Benson, librarian at the Portsmouth Public Library. Congratulations for putting together this really wonderful, great first time ever event.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be hosting it.
I mean, look at all the authors that are here. It's incredible. Look at that people, all these people from this area.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We're really glad to have a way to support local authors because we have such a rich community of writers and illustrators here on the Seacoast.
On the Seacoast. You know, Laura, I'm from Nashua, and I wonder if Nashua area, I hope no one will be offended that's there watching, but I'm a little jealous at all the people that are from this area that are writers and have come to this fabulous event. It must have taken you all year to put it together.
Well, we've been working on it for a little while, and this is just the first year that we're calling it the Portsmouth Literary Festival, but we hope to make it even bigger next year and have a longer planning period for that too. And I should mention that it's New Hampshire Writers Week, and so we actually have a big community throughout the state of fantastic writers,
Wow,
so
do
we're
you
glad
ever.
to be able to support them. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, one thing, and I was talking to your director,
Steve Butzel.
Steve, and boy, we had a great gab on the phone. Talk about someone who's passionate about libraries,
Yes.
and as I am. And one of the things that came up is sometimes convincing an audience that libraries are still relevant. Hello.
That's right. Yeah, that's our ongoing, challenge and opportunity really is to redefine the library as a community space where people are meeting and talking. And I think authors is a perfect fit for the library. That's where people expect to hear about new books. And if we can do that for our local writers, that's even better.
I know, because what greater opportunity, what excitement as to meet someone who's written something that you enjoy reading. I mean, it's like maybe in a microcosm way, meeting a rock star.
Yeah, I think that's true. We actually had one person who came by our table today and said, I can't believe I met him. And one of the things she loves most about this author, K.D. Mason, is that he writes about rye, and he's also a runner, and she knows those running routes that are in his books, and it's just really exciting for her to not only be able to enjoy the literature, but also be excited about that local connection and say, hey, I've been there, I know those places.
Right. It's the everyman sort of experience that people feel like they don't have the articulation or the words to express it themselves, and yet appreciate it and respect that others have done so.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, this is also a good place for people to discover writers they may not know yet, and it's
True.
nice to have that great local connection.
All right, one of the things that came up that Steve said that is a conundrum, and if you could expound on this, is the fact that what about you have, let me find his name, you have David Beck.
David Barnett?
No, he is.
Jeff Deck.
You have Jeff Deck.
That's right.
Now,
Yeah.
here's a writer who is all online and does not have hard copy writings. And that is yet another aspect that librarians are dealing with.
And we give access to ebooks in several ways at the library, but a lot of those ways are through traditional publishers. So if we have people who are self-published or they go through a small publishing company, they may not be able to provide access to their ebooks through the traditional avenues, like we have a statewide system that we use. So what we've done to try to get around that problem is we've started offering a local author Kindle. It's a Kindle that you can check out from the library for 2 weeks. It comes comes loaded with a whole bunch of books. And in this case, we do all ebooks from local authors.
That is a great idea.
Yeah.
So that's something that I guess in your meetings that you put together. I'm smelling some really good food here.
Yes, so this is Becca. She works here at the library,
Hi,
and
Becca.
she is just delivering the pizzas that we picked up. Flatbread Company was generous enough to donate some pizzas for our authors today. So they've always been very generous to the
Ooh.
library. Yeah.
Oh,
we
very
have lots
good.
of support from local businesses, which is fantastic. All
Well,
donated.
Thank you so much for this great
Yes,
event, and I
thank
just
you.
hope it keeps growing. I know that Boston has a wonderful literary event
right.
as well, and it's nice to see one back here in the Granite State. Congratulations
Yes.
again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
My name's Jacqueline Benson, and I'm the author of The Smoke Hunter. It's a book of adventure, romance, mystery, and the supernatural, just to keep things interesting. So I'm going to give you a little taste of it right now. We're going to jump into the story about, say, a half inch into the story. And to set things up, our heroine, Ellie Mallory, is a suffragette who's always dreamed of being an archaeologist. But in 1898, that's not an easy thing for a woman to do. But she has come across an opportunity to find chasing a rumor of a lost city in the jungles of British Honduras that may give her a chance to finally prove to the world not only that she can be an archaeologist, but that she can find potentially one of the most game-changing archaeological discoveries of her age. But she can't get out to the location of this city by herself. She needs help. And help looks like it might come in the form of a rather dangerous-looking American surveyor. So we are going to jump in to a scene between the two of them where she needs to convince this guy to give her a hand. So let's see. How about here? I need to get out of here, Ellie said. Well, how about first you tell me what sort of trouble you've managed to get yourself into? And why should I do that? He shrugged. Because I might be able to help? I can do without your... Adam cut in before Ellie could finish her retort. It looks to me like you could use a friend right now, Princess, and I don't see anyone else lining up for the job. So how's about you hold whatever it was you were going to say and think for a minute? Ellie closed her mouth. Her eyes traveled over the layered pages on the walls, and a thought, not a particularly welcome one, forced its way into her mind. She had the map. She'd stolen it back, and that meant there was still a chance she could find the city. After all, Dawson had told her to disappear, and what better place to vanish than into the bush? But she wasn't foolish enough to believe that she could do it alone. As much as it galled her, she needed someone to guide her, and the only person in the colony who'd admitted to being that crazy was standing in front of her. She stepped over to the table and looked down. On top of it were a pile of sketches, very good sketches, of ruins surrounded by rainforest. Are these yours? She asked. Just don't touch anything. He gently removed her hand from the papers. Her eyes drifted to the huge map on the wall, an amalgamation of sketches like the ones on the table, prints and notes, all tacked onto the surface with strings running from one place to another. She let her eyes follow the course of rivers, the detailed drawings of mountain peaks. You've been to all these places? Most of them, he confirmed. You once told me you were the only guide in this city who would take a woman into the bush. Did you mean that? He regarded her evenly. Depends on the woman and what she's after. She could feel how precariously the situation was balanced. However little she liked the form it happened to be taking, Ellie knew that this was her chance, possibly her only chance. But if she was going to convince him, she needed to make an impression, and she knew of only one way to do it.
You were like a female Indiana Jones kind of writer.
Yeah, and the research is a big part of it for me. I'm a great big nerd for history and archaeology and mythology. And
So I was right.
Yes, you were, absolutely. And this book incorporates a lot of that into it, but it has the sense of fun and adventure of an Indiana Jones type story. I went to the Queen's University of Belfast over in Northern Ireland and studied anthropology because I wanted more context to be able to pull into my books and more of an understanding of different cultures and different ways of life. So.
Wow. That is such a cool confluence of determination to have sorted that out so in advance? And did it, and so still today's stories that come out, like I just read today or just this week, that they found a whole unknown DNA of humankind.
Oh, that's news for me. But
Yeah, it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
But those sort of things all
Fascinate me. And the Smoke Hunter draws a lot on that. I draw on Mayan history, both modern Mayan history and prehistoric Mayan history, draw on the archaeology, draw on life in a British colony in Central America in the late 19th century, and training as an...
Can I call you Jackie?
Yes, you can.
So Jackie, let's get down to it though. People really care about love, sex, money, crime, thrillers, and that the other things sometimes play a back seat role. Am I right here?
You're absolutely right. If a book doesn't have tension, if it doesn't make you want to keep turning pages, and it's exactly the things you listed, and the sense of a mystery that you need to solve, or of potential earth-shaking consequences to the events that are happening, that's what makes you want to keep pulling through to find out what happens next.
Well, it took a lot of books to get this one out. So and you're still a young writer, so does this keep measuring up to your own expectations, and are you finally able to pay off college debt?
I don't know about paying off college debt just yet, but as a writer, I'm constantly pushing myself to be a better craftsman. So I'm very proud of this book, and I'm also really excited for the next one because I can take everything I've learned from this and put it into crafting an even better and more engaging product.
How long is this book?
About 450 pages.
450 pages. How long did it take you to write it?
From starting the first draft to finishing it, about a year, and then another year or two worth of edits and revisions.
So really, when you talk about the habits of good writers or accomplished writers, are we talking about, as in many cases you hear over and over again, it's a job. You start at some time in the morning or at any time, but whichever time you start or end, it's about 8 hours a day. It's a job.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of writers talk about themselves as artists, and I like to think of myself more like a craftsperson, because that is somebody who has to sit down and do their work from day to day and is constantly working on developing skills. And writing it's a craft that you're constantly developing and learning, and if you don't sit down to work at it the way you do any other job, you're not going to get any better.
One thing I want to end with, and that is what a cool event it is. That so many people out there today think that libraries are passé, are obsolete. Here we are at a place where people go to get books or electronic things or use constantly new and innovative ways to use a library, and yet people can come here and face-to-face meet people that write the things that they love to read. If that isn't current, I don't know what is.
Well, I'd rather be in the library than just about anywhere else, so you're talking to the right person.
So thanks for joining me, and congratulations on The Smoke Hunter.
Thank you very much.
Jeff Deck is joining me now, and he's an indie writer, and I invited him to talk with me because I think you represent that different breed of writer who is exploring new ways of publishing, and I think it's important to cue in the older, more traditional reader into understanding ways to access people like you.
Or in self-publishing, like a great and easy way to get started is by writing ebooks. You know, they're published through platforms like Amazon, where you can have distribution all over the internet, you know, instantly, and it's the way a lot of independent authors have been gaining traction and finding new audiences.
And yet you're holding a book.
You know, in some ways, I did a print copy of the Pseudo Chronicles of Mark Hunley, almost to as a further promotional tool for the ebook version. I mean, I'm a fairly unknown author. This, you know, I'm selling at events like this for $18, but you know, people can go on Amazon and buy, you know, my ebook for $6, which looks pretty good in comparison. So I think a lot of indie authors these days are finding success through primarily through ebooks and doing, you know, series of books and sort of gaining readerships through, you know, small, relatively inexpensive books that people can then kind of buy into and then, you know, look for more.
It's such a curious situation because I know that just like scouts are out there looking for athletes or talent in singing or dancing or acting, there are scouts now combing Amazon in the publishing field, looking for those people who are, because there are analytics out there, right? Looking at, well, Jeff Deck sold 1 million copies of, the Pseudo Chronicles, etc. So it's such an interesting dynamic, and yet the arguments come back. Oh, it must not be any good because he's not got, a publisher behind him. And all these theories are, being debunked.
Yeah, I mean, if you're self-publishing, you still need to be professional in your process. You need to find professional editor, professional cover designer, get professional formatting. You still need to, to follow all the same rules as traditional publishers. And, if you want,
or you'll fail.
yeah, if you want your work to be taken seriously. But, you look at some of the success stories like, the book The Martian that was then made into a big movie. That like started out as like a best-selling indie ebook, and then one of the big 5 publishers did a print version of it, and so it's almost like some of the
Is that
big,
the holy grail for people like you going, maybe so and so will see this?
well, there's an interesting paradox there, because if you become big enough with your success in self-publishing to attract the attention of a big publisher,
I know where he's going with this. Why
then-
bother?
Then what do you need the big publisher
You
for?
keep all the cake.
Because then the big publisher is going to, take like 85% of
That
your cover
much?
price. Yeah. Whereas, for ebooks, if you're publishing something for like $2.99 on Amazon as an ebook, you get to keep 70% of the profits for that. So, if you can make it work for yourself, then by the time the big guys come knocking, then it may not even necessarily make sense to say yes to them.
Are you happy with where you are currently,
I think
relatively speaking?
I'm happy because I've got a book in my hand that was not happening otherwise. I had started my publishing career with a traditionally published book through Random House called The Great Typo Hunt, and then when I wanted to switch to writing fiction, I was really having a hard time even getting traction with anyone. Everything was so siloed in the publishing industry that I was kind of starting over. So I'm happy being able to be in control of my own destiny. It's going to be a long road to attract attention. It's going to take more books to really get on the map, but it's something I enjoy doing anyway. So it's an enjoyable road.
It's kind of, I see parallels with the music industry.
Yeah.
Someone like Tom Petty who started his own label, or people who, refuse to go the way of, the man,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you see parallels in a lot of different industries these days. Usually people want to support, independent restaurants, listen to independent music if they can. People like to see indie movies, and so, reading indie books is the next logical step in that.
Well, all the best luck to you, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Cool, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.